So Israel has done it again. The rogue regime of war criminal Benjamin Netanyahu in this settler colony has gone ahead to launch another illegal war in the Middle East, thereby making the world even more unsafe. And this grave action by bloodthirsty terrorist Benjamin Netanyahu came just hours after Donald Trump told us that Israel could attack Iran, even though he wasn't sure if this was imminent.
Are you trying to talk Netanyahu out of doing that, or are you so against Iran having a nuclear weapon that you're okay, he does his thing because it is not an American war?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. Look, I want to have an agreement with Iran. We're fairly close to an agreement. We are fairly close to a pretty good agreement. It's got to be better than pretty good, though, but it's got to be, I'd much prefer an agreement. As long as I think there is an agreement, I don't want them going in because I think that would blow it. Might help it, actually, but it also could blow it. But we've had very good discussions with Iran. Whether or not we get there, I can't tell you, but it'll happen soon. I say this, Peter, very strongly. They can't have, whether it's going in or not going in, they can't have a nuclear weapon. I'd prefer the more friendly path.
And can you tell us what the Israelis told you that made you start to evacuate the dependents of servicemen and women who are stationed in the Middle East?
They didn't tell me anything, but I said, look, there's a chance of massive conflict. We have a lot of American people in this area, and I said, we got to tell them to get out.
I'll tell you in a bit as to why this particular clip is extremely important. Netanyahu said that Israel had killed several top members of the Iranian army and those working on the country's nuclear program by bombing civilian targets in Tehran. Yes, Israel bombed civilian targets. You can see visuals on social media. I can't show them here. One of the visuals showed a child, a baby, lying dead on the street of Tehran. Isn't it familiar? Haven't we seen enough of this rogue regime, of these barbarians killing thousands of babies and children in Gaza? They are now hell-bent on repeating the same in Tehran now. And the Western media outlets have been quick to legitimize this act by calling it preemptive strike. That's what media has been using. Nobody is questioning. The fact remains that what Israel has done would cause more chaos and humanitarian disaster in the region. But does it matter to the West and its media outlets? Netanyahu said that Israel had acted in self-defense. Really? This genocidal maniac can utter any nonsense and the Western world will remain silent.
Moments ago, Israel launched Operation Rising Lion, a targeted military operation to roll back the Iranian threat to Israel's very survival. This operation will continue for as many days as it takes to remove this threat. For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. In recent years, Iran has produced enough highly enriched uranium for 9 atom bombs. 9. In recent months, Iran has taken steps that it has never taken before, steps to weaponize this enriched uranium. And if not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival.
As I said, a complete silence from the West. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, who would have issued a full condemnation and even deployed the UK forces to defend Israel if it was Iran who had attacked Israel, didn't even bother tweeting his response to this dangerous provocation by Netanyahu. His minion, David Lammy, he tweeted, and you can see what he wrote. It's there on the screen. Once again, no condemnation for his paymasters. Just look at the choice of his words. Is he criticizing Israel? Is he condemning an illegal act of Israel? No. Why would he? The Trump administration has been quick to distance itself from this attack. The tone of Secretary of State Marco Rubio's statement shows just how frightened the Trump administration is about a possible retaliation from Tehran, which has vowed to hit the US interest in the region. Now you know why Trump was quick to evacuate Americans from the region. Just see the language and tone by Rubio. He is literally begging Iranians to not target American interests.
He said tonight Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We're not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Israel advised us that they believe this action was necessary for its self-defense. President Trump and the administration have taken all necessary steps to protect our forces and remain in close contact with our regional partners. Let me be clear, Iran should not target US interests or personnel. So that's what the US Secretary of State said in the aftermath of those strikes by Israel.
But is Rubio telling us the truth? Want Americans involved in assisting Israel to carry out another illegal act on a sovereign country? As much as Rubio or his boss may try, the truth is out. Netanyahu attacked Iran with the full knowledge and support. That's crucial. And support of Donald Trump. First, listen to Fox News' chief political correspondent, Brett Baier, who spoke to Trump in the immediate aftermath of the Israeli atrocities.
On that note, let's bring back in the chief political anchor, Brett Baier. He joins us by phone. He just happened to speak with the President of the United States, Donald Trump. Brett, what did he tell you?
Hey, Trace. Yeah, I just spoke to President Trump. One thing, the president was aware of Israel's action before it happened. There were no surprises here. But he gave me a quote. He said, Iran cannot have a nuclear bomb. We're hoping to get back to the negotiating table. We'll see. There are several people in leadership in Iran that will not be coming back. Now, the president, I know, has spoken to Prime Minister Netanyahu several times in recent days. As I mentioned before, the Trump administration reached out to a key Middle Eastern ally beforehand to acknowledge this strike was going to happen, but that the U.S. was not involved in the strike, but the goal still to get Iran back to the negotiating table. There was this building frustration about what Iran was doing at that negotiating table with Steve Witkoff, the Middle East envoy. He was scheduled again for Sunday. Looks like, obviously, that may change the dynamic there. Whether that moves forward at all depends on what Iran does in response.
Alistair Bunkle of Sky News explained it even better on the US support to Israel ahead of launching an attack on another sovereign country.
The Americans were aware that this was going to happen, and I think a few things have happened in the last 24 hours which we are now starting to understand. There's been a pretty big exercise in deception going on. Firstly, Benjamin Netanyahu made it known through Israeli media that he was planning to carry on with a weekend holiday up in the north of Israel this coming weekend. Well, that was clearly a ruse. Ron Dermer, his right-hand man, the strategic affairs minister, and the head of the Mossad, David Barnea, were reportedly going to fly out of this country to an unknown location to meet Steve Witkoff, who is Donald Trump's point man for almost everything foreign affairs these days, ahead of talks between Iran and America in Oman at the weekend. That was never going to happen. Another point of deception. And Donald Trump seems to have been in on it as well. His ambassador over here suggesting that Israel would not attack Iran without America's green light. So I think the Americans were aware of it. I think they've given it political support. I think they have helped in some form for Israel to carry out these strikes with an element of surprise. The question now is, if Iran does respond, will America be dragged into it? Will they try and hit US bases around the region, for example? If they do so, then it will be very hard for President Trump to keep America out of this conflict.
The next time these clowns lecture us about peace and rule of law, we know what our response should be. They have completely lost moral high ground to preach the world on anything. But the bigger question is this: how can a president who is never tired of claiming that he is against war can support a rogue regime of a settler colony to set the world on fire? Aren't we tired of hearing Trump claim how Ukraine war or October 7 wouldn't have happened if he was the president? So how has he become a willing partner in Netanyahu's depraved action, which many suspect would trigger a World War III? According to Middle East expert James Dorsey, Netanyahu went ahead with his decision to attack Iran because he knew Trump couldn't act against him.
The Americans have said that Iran was not working on a nuclear weapon, at least not on this point. There was legitimate concern about the degree of uranium enrichment. Keep in mind that progressive enrichment of uranium was a response to the U.S. withdrawal, President Trump's withdrawal from the 2015 International Nuclear Agreement in 2018. I think what we're seeing is Netanyahu taking advantage of on the one hand, a stalemate in the Iran nuclear negotiations that were supposed to be continued on Sunday. And while the United States has sought to distance itself from this military action, I think that Netanyahu also sensed that there may not be serious consequences if he ignores Trump's advice not to strike at Iran at this point.
Usually, you become so weak, irrelevant, and lame duck towards the end of your tenure as a president. But for Trump to become a laughing stock within months of starting his second term is truly astonishing. That's what happens when you prefer to become a slave to a settler colony. You may claim that you are the president of the most powerful country on earth, but for all practical reasons and purposes, you are a slave. At least that's what these events are showing. You are nothing more than a slave to Benjamin Netanyahu, a war criminal wanted by the International Criminal Court. And this chap wanted to win Nobel Peace Prize? Keep dreaming. We will see how Iran retaliates after this latest act of Israeli aggression. But this would no doubt give rise to demands for Iran to immediately acquire nuclear bombs, as rightly expressed by this American expert.
I got to tell you, the major consequences here are political, not physical. And by political, I mean that in every country, there are a group of people, in most countries, there are a group of people who are pro-bomb advocates, trying to sell the idea to their country that we should have a nuclear weapon. And those folks are in Iran too, just like they've been in other countries. Israel has nuclear weapons, right? So those folks who want Iran to get a nuclear weapon, which I think is a terrible idea, they are, when they meet tonight, when they meet tomorrow, they're going to be saying, hey, we need to get back. We need to show them that we can deter them. They have crossed a line. And the voices of restraint will be overmatched and in retreat. And that is a dangerous political moment. The consequence of a strike is not going to be its physical effects. It will be the political effects, and most particularly a decision to acquire nuclear weapons. And I fear that, when you look at past strikes, when Israel hit Osirak again, Israel is pretty much the only country that does this. When they hit Osirak in Iraq, what was Saddam's response? He doubled down on the nuclear program. They give it new political priority because they're angry and they want to strike back. So I think this is, whatever, it'll be an environmental mess to clean up for sure. There'll be casualties for sure. But as we look to the future, if Iran feels like it's now supposed to develop a nuclear weapon, and we have 2 nuclear weapon states in the Middle East, then I think we have taken a terrible step towards danger, one brought on unnecessarily by a provocative attack.
Okay. Jim Walsh, thank you very much indeed.
Meanwhile, Iran has launched dozens of drones to attack Israel, but this means absolutely nothing, as all drones would be shot down. Many on social media are unanimous in their assessment that Iran will have to hit Israel harder if the Islamic Republic wants itself to be taken seriously. That's it from me. Thank you very much for your support of this platform and our journalism on buymeacoffee.com and Patreon. If you too think that our journalism is worth supporting, then you too should consider becoming part of it. In the meantime, if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do so, because that's one of the many ways you can support independent journalism. God bless you all.